We're a unique podcast for families of faith, produced by parents and pastors who understand and appreciate how hard it is to maintain your faith in a hostile culture. We're here to encourage and support you in the most vital role of all, parenting. If you're feeling overwhelmed and afraid, it's okay. You're not alone. Brilliantly Brave is hosted by two honest and engaging dads with 9 kids between them. A road tripper, author, and pastor, Father Brad Matthias, and iShine founder, solo parenting expert, and all-around foodie, Mr. Robert Beeson. Join us each week as we explore and engage with some of the most intriguing, inspiring, outrageous, and awesome parents in the world. This is Brilliantly Brave.
Hi, I'm Pastor Brad Matthias, and I want to welcome you to Brilliantly Brave Parenting with your laughing sidekick, host, and altogether foodie friend, Robert Beeson.
Hey, Brad.
That was the best intro I've ever done.
Yeah. You sounded like you were trying to channel like Ellen DeGeneres or something.
It was
pretty pathetic.
That would be hard to do without
But
that.
it's good to be here, Brad. Let's try to get this back on track.
I'm doing my best. You know, when you do enough of these interviews, you start to develop a sense about things, right?
You would hope.
You would think. Yeah. Well, as we've been talking and we've had a nice chat before we started recording, our guest today is one of those moms that you get a sense immediately that she's been through some stuff and come out the other side and is in a really good place to share with our audience today. So I don't want to take a lot of time introducing her, but I do want to say that she knows more about you, I think, than I do. And so I'm hopeful.
It's possible.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that through this interview process today that we learn a little bit more about Robert and that our audience can sort of appreciate you like I do.
Okay, I'm game. But yeah, Tiffany does know a lot. Tiff,
why don't you introduce our artist since you go way back?
We do go way back.
We do.
I met Tiffany. How old were you, Tiff?
It was 1996, so
Yeah.
I was 20, about to be 21.
Wow, that's crazy. So I met her when she was 20. 21,
Yeah.
I was a little bit older than that, 22, 23.
Sure.
When I was in the music business and
Right.
we worked together on some records. She fronted a group called Plumb, and I am so incredibly proud of the things that she's done. And
That he helped me discover myself. I mean, there's so much credit to be given to him for
Well,
Plumb, by the way.
Not necessarily.
don't.
Not that you're going to take that, but I'm just saying.
Don't pump his head up anymore.
I'm just saying.
I have to live with him after you leave the studio. Okay.
Anyway, I think the thing that I love the most about Tiffany, along with her voice and her amazing songwriting abilities and ability to tackle difficult situations, is that Tiff has experienced some very difficult things herself. And like you said in the open, has come on the other side of it. But it's not just coming out on the other side of it. It is using those experiences to help other people that are in those places know that there's hope.
Yes.
And so we're so excited. I am
Well, thank
specifically
you.
very excited to have you. So
Thank
Tiffany
you.
from Plumb, welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Welcome
Wow.
to Brilliantly Brave. And as a disclaimer, season 3, we're being extra careful. None of us feel brilliant or brave as parents, do we?
No, we do not.
We don't wake up in the morning just brimming with confidence.
Confident in our lack of, that's
Right.
for sure. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been a fan. I love your music. I've been around Christian music now for at least a decade. I'm not nearly as old as Robert. Not nearly as old as he is.
But you're older than me. I have figured
I'm
that out.
48. Robert's 51. And,
I'm holding to 42 as long as I can.
I understand.
Yeah.
I appreciate that too. I became a grandfather this year.
Whoa!
So I'm experiencing life a little differently. Have a little different perspective. But as we go through these journeys, I've worked with distribution. I've worked in different Christian media capacities as an executive. And there's a temptation within the industry to sort of create content that radio will play. That's sort of a driving force, sort of the tension between the artistic and the sort of business side of the world. And I think your latest project is pretty remarkable. I got a chance to listen to your EP and just one or two of those songs. And I actually was so moved by it that I actually wrote it down, which you don't know me that well. But
you just used the word remarkable, by the way, and that's just very big to me. So thanks.
Well, I mean, anyone can sort of do a superficial project But it takes real life experience to actually go to the deeper places in our heart. And so this lyric comes from that. And as a pastor, I recognize that. And so I wanted to ask you, I wanted to say the quote, and then I wanted to ask you about where this came from.
Sure.
So the quote is from your EP, God Help Me. It's the single, God Help Me. And it says, if I'm honest, there's quite a bit of fear to sit here in this silence. And I mean, as a parent, right, my heart just felt that. Like that was more than a cerebral response. I wasn't just like, oh, that's a cool lyric, or it was more my heart went, oh, I've been there.
Right.
So I'm curious, what led to you writing a song like that?
Well, God Help Me, just those 3 words is a prayer I've taught my kids to pray when they didn't know what else to pray, because we want them to pray, but they don't always see us pray. They don't always hear us pray. And we just sort of by osmosis kind of think that they'll learn how to communicate with the Lord. And they have fears and they have concerns and they have worries that are completely valid. And I don't want to discredit ever or discount their emotions. And so I've just, since they were little, have just said, well, just say, God help me. If you don't know, just say, God help me. And tried to let them see me say it at times, but found myself saying it more often over the last year and a half or 2. I was out on the road with Big Daddy Weave, and when I went out with them, I used their band. That was the first time in my career I hadn't taken my whole crew. I was really insecure, didn't realize how insecure I would be. I thought when my marriage had imploded and had rebuilt, I had dealt with a lot of my pride, got out there and realized there was a lot of pride I was still dealing with. So there's pride and insecurity and just asking God to help me with my anxiety about that. And I was gone a lot more than I'd ever been consistently with touring. And so I had a lot more anxiety and depression. Those are things I also struggle with. And so I was finding myself saying this prayer that I've told my kids to say. And so on one of my trips home, we had like a 10-day on, 10-day off schedule. My middle, Oliver, had chest pains, and they were as sincere. I heard the strange sound from the back of the car, like a and I kind of glanced back, and he's holding his chest, and he's saying under his breath, God help me, God help me, God help me, God help me. And I'm trying to pull over and trying to talk to him, and as I finally get the car parked, turn around, and he looks up at me, and he goes, it worked. And I said, what, buddy? And he goes, well, you'd said to say that, and I did, and it worked. And it turns out he wasn't having a heart attack. He was actually having something similar to what you have, growing pains in your legs and his ribs. They did this whole exam over him because I was kind of nervous about what was going on. And but in his moment of real fear, like before he could even say Mom or anything like that, he was saying, God help me. And so kind of going back to how that inspired me to, you know what, I need to write a song called that, because from a little child up into a grown adult, whether you're struggling with anxiety or depression or fear or whatever it is, having that prayer that you can just simply say, just his name, was kind of the motivator to write the song. But that line came from, I was sitting in service at church, and the pastor, I completely forget now what he was talking about, our pastor Dave, but I sat there and I was wrestling in my heart with some stuff. I had several different friends going through some horrible marriage stuff on the opposite sides of the fences on both sides, one where the husband had left, one where the wife was leaving, one where another wife was struggling with just temptations. And having gone through a marriage crisis and coming through that, we are sometimes a magnet for those stories of like, hey,
right,
Tiff,
sure.
I want to talk to you about this. And so all of that kind of just was sitting in my lap on that Sunday. And I was like, you know what? Sometimes you don't want to be alone with the Lord. You don't want to be quiet with him, because that chaos and that noise and those distractions sometimes pull us away from him, which isn't good, but it keeps us from having to hear him say, I want you to stop when you don't want to stop, or I want you to stay when you really want to go. I want you to, I want to sit still, but God's going to tell me to move. Like, if I sit here in this silence and I really hear you, you might ask me to do something I don't actually want to do. And even though I say I trust you and I want to trust you, do I trust you? And so all those stories were just kind of swirling in my head, from my own to my friends, to my son. And so the lyric literally came so quickly sitting there, and my friend Christy literally nudged me, and she saw what I was writing, and it had nothing to do with the service, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Shh, I'm writing a song." And months down the road, when I had her come by the studio, she actually sang gang vocals on a song that's on the record, on a song called Human. But when she was in the studio, I said, "Remember that day you elbowed me and you were like, you're not even writing about what Pastor Dave's talking about?" I said, "That's what I was writing." I said, "Those lyrics came to me because I was just sitting there, and it was like, what would you ask of me? If I sit here in this silence and I really hear you, what are you going to ask of me? Because I don't know that I want to listen to you."
Right.
And so, God help me. Like, okay, like just cut through the noise, cut through the whatever, and just say his name and ask for his help. Because it's like in your mind and your heart, you do trust him, but when you don't feel strong enough to trust him, say his name and ask him to help. And
right.
I mean, he says in Psalms 120, verse 1, like, I cried out to the Lord in my distress or my despair, and he answered me. And the only reason he can answer you is because he's listening. He's always listening. And so there's a confidence that I do have, although I don't always feel, brilliant and brave and confident. But it's like I do have a confidence that he is always listening. And so that was just and I thought, if I write this song for anyone else but myself, like, it has already been helpful to me. And so for God to be using it in other people's lives is just icing on the cake. And so I really wrote it from a real personal place of like those 3 words. So
that's awesome.
yeah, thanks.
I mean, I'm listening to you talk, and there are so many people who feel like they're supposed to do something with their life. Like they have a talent, like they can sing, they can write, they can perform. And they're feeling this sort of nudge, like I'm supposed to write a song or I'm supposed to perform music for my church. This doesn't just happen, what you just did. Like you wrote a lyric, you connected it with your heart, it came out, now there's a hit on radio. Walk us through the steps. What does it look like for someone who's sort of waking up to the fact they might be called to be in music like you are? How did you get to where you are today?
Well,
in 5 minutes or less.
Yeah. It's funny that we're sitting here with Robert Beeson.
Yeah, it is funny.
But long before, I mean, Robert met me when I was 20, but long before that, when I was 3, I sang a duet in church with my dad. And I was standing in front of the mirror.
You were 3 years old?
Well, it was a pretty janky duet. I'm pretty sure it sounded pretty lame.
That's pretty awesome, though.
But 3. I was apparently, I mean, I don't remember being 1 and 2, but around 3, I start to have a memory. But that I was always singing hairbrush in front of the, mirror trying to do that thing. And so he was just singing on a Sunday. My dad, if he was sitting in the room right now, I'd say he's not this great singer. He's a kind of a choir sounding, singer. That's no discredit to, excuse me, anyone in a choir, because I feel like that could have just come out the wrong way. But he's just
You feel like that might have come out?
Yeah, might have come out the wrong way. So to all of you choir singers who are amazing, congratulations. My dad is not one of you. He's just,
that was a great disclaimer.
He just liked to sing in the choir. And so it was a small church in Indianapolis, and he was going to sing on a Sunday. So he brought me along. And he had the guy at the house, in the front of the house, mute his vocal in the house when we got to the chorus, but kept both of us in the monitors so I could hear him singing with me, but the audience could only hear me when I got to the chorus, because at 3, I knew how the chorus went, but I couldn't remember all the verses. And so, the blood that gives me strength from day to day, it will never lose its power. That's the song that we sang. And a guy named J.D. Richardson came up to me afterwards, and it felt like he came up to me every Sunday, which I'm sure he did not. But for years, this older gentleman in our church would say, "When you going to sing again?" And I loved how I made him feel. Like, it made me feel good to know that I made him feel like that. And I was like, I just love singing. Singing's just so fun. And so any chance to sing, whether it was church, school, in my community, a coffee shop, my parents helped with a homeless ministry for a while. I would sing there. My mom was a part of a women's ministry in our community that whenever there was a month where they didn't have any entertainment, well, Tiffany, could you sing? Could you just come and bring your little tracks and sing something? Okay, sure, Mom. And so, I sang in roller skating rinks. I mean, I was quite the roller skating rink. I'm just kidding. That's a joke.
Robert is too.
I sang anywhere and everywhere, just, that there was a need. Nothing professional, nothing great to speak of. And towards the end of high school, I recorded like a custom project that were all original songs, but they weren't mine. There was a songwriter that was connected to another songwriter that kind of put this thing together and said, hey, she's got a great voice. I think his sister was my youth pastor's wife. And it was like a very random way to connect this. But, oh, this girl in your youth group has a good voice. Maybe we could. So I sang these songs in the studio and just got some studio experience, which was fun. And then they let me like take this little CD and I would have it whenever I was going to go sing somewhere. I was not just singing tracks of songs you'd heard. These are some original songs as well. And so I'm 16, 17, and then Bill Gaither's son had a band that had 2 backup singers in it. One was married to a guy that my parents' family knew, and it was really, it really is kind of crazy. If you're listening to this and you're wondering about how this all happens, it really is just a step by step by step doors of opportunity of you just being faithful sometimes, and sometimes God just being really gracious and merciful and his providence working through some things that I had nothing to do with. But asked me to sing backup for them by way of her husband, and that led to singing backup for some other artists. And then I would come to Nashville for rehearsals, and then, oh, why don't you sing in the studio? So-and-so needs a demo sang, or some background vocals on this record. And I literally got a voicemail at my apartment on a real answering machine with a tape in it. And it was a guy named Robert Beeson leaving me a message from Essential Records. And I was like, I don't even know who that is. And the guy in my living room, his name was Adam Anders, who's now like Glee guy, was standing in my living room and he said, that's Jars of Clay's label. And I was like, oh, they must need backup vocals for something. And so I came to the label to meet with Robert, assuming that's what that meeting was about. And he was like, I love your voice. And the rest is kind of history. Like, it started from a real professional standpoint. The door swung wide open there. And I really feel like, without realizing it, when I was singing at a homeless shelter or a roller skating rink, my mom has said on record that I think God was seeing if he could trust you with a roller skating rink before he would trust you with an arena. And so when all that kind of came to be, it was like, whoa, I don't even know. And so Plumb really... Robert Beeson is a huge part of the inception of Plumb, because it was like, well, what kind of music do you listen to? Okay, well, here's some things I listen to. Here's some things I like. Well, have you listened to this new record? Have you listened to that? And he was trying to help me find my voice. I never felt like Robert was like, I want you to be the next so-and-so or Christian version of this. Like, I just really love your voice. I love you. Let's just find out what your thing is. And so I kind of had to find out what that was in front of everybody. So it's like, let's do this female-fronted band thing. And okay, well, the band members are kind of swapping out here and there, but I actually can write a song. I didn't know that I could really write a song. Okay, well, let's keep doing this. And so the Evolve is, here today. So
that's amazing.
Just doors of opportunity. I think you just walk through them with faithfulness when you can. You don't try to pick the lock.
And I think that's the thing that I've always been amazed at, Tiffany, is that from the very beginning, it was very much a bumbling through journey. And watching as you've evolved into the artist that you have, and in life, and just even your marriage and your family, it's just been, you're not a strategic thinker. And I mean that as a compliment, because a lot of people, and I think parents especially, feel like they have to have it all mapped out. And they have to figure out, this is, if I do this, then that will mean this and this. And there's a certain amount of that you have to, be an adult and kind of figure out how life works. But what I think is remarkable is that you have trusted God and you've looked for the doors opening. Instead of trying to find necessarily the right answer, you've lived through a process of whatever it is, whether it's making a record or redeeming a marriage, or now reaching out to broken girls. It's always been this kind of, you don't have to have it mapped out first in order to start.
You don't. I think the intentionality is, I'm committed to being faithful to what you're asking of me. Right. I don't know what that's going to be. And I think not being as strategic, there are a handful of times when that's not to my advantage.
It gets messy.
And it gets messy, but more often than not, because my manager has even said, like, oh, I know that your life is like full of all these just opportunities that came your way that don't even make sense, but here's, and then he'll try to go into, but this is not one of those, And I push back on him a lot, where I'm like, hold on, like, historically, I think God has had his hand on me for such a time as this, and you're supposed to walk through this door. Like, I didn't call Bill Gaither's son. He called me. And then I didn't call a record label. They called me. And so it's not about, and please hear me, if you're listening, like, I don't think that you're supposed to be super passive. I don't think you're supposed to bank on being uninspired or unmotivated or not taking initiative. I do think I have been proactive. I think you have to be responsive. I think you have to take initiative. But like when that door is in front of you, you didn't have to create the door, but you do have to actually take your right leg and your left leg and walk through it. And so I think some people do expect all of it to just happen. And they think, well, that wasn't, God didn't do anything. Well, what's the joke about like someone stranded and, God's going to help me. And then,
I've been sending someone.
And they keep sending, all these things keep happening. And it's just like,
I've been sending all these.
Hello. And so you do have to, be proactive. I do think that you have to be a part of that.
I think the thing that, and I don't want to be misunderstood in saying, that this just all happened to you and you had nothing to do with it because you've worked extremely hard at what you do.
Sure. I
just think the thing that's really, that stands out to me is that no matter what you do, you're always looking for God in the situation or looking for, you don't have to have it all figured out in order to take the first step.
Sure.
There's a certain amount of trust and faith, which goes against, like, that's in the face of fear, because fear is like, a lot of us are, well, I don't want to do this because I'm scared that what if I do this and that kind of thing. And I know that you deal with that. I know you deal with anxiety and fear and that kind of thing. But I just think it's amazing that this mess that is part of all of our lives, you continue to embrace and go, okay, well, what does this mean? And how can I help somebody else that may be struggling with fear and just needing to say, God, help me.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I was going with it other than to just compliment you on that, because I think it's a distinction. There are some artists that have it all mapped out. Like, if I do this, then I do this, then I do this.
Well, we just had a 2018 vision meeting for the year. And I think if there was a GoPro going, it would have been very comical, because there wasn't, a lot of people say, what's our end goal? And let's work backwards from there, which can be really helpful and strategic. And I think it's important in business. But we said that at one point, like, okay, so what's our end goal? And by the end of the meeting, it was like, did we even talk about an end goal? Like, and because so much of what, again, not wanting to be passive, but it's like, what we were talking about before this interview even started, like something kind of came my way of, hey, we'd like to work with you on this, such, and it's like, okay, and again, that response of what is the most faithful thing I can do? Because I think the number one question, this is not proven, but I'm just throwing it out there, but I think the number one question asked amongst Christians is, what is God's will for my life or in this situation? And I think it's the same for everybody. I think it's to be faithful. And now that's going to look different for you and me, because our opportunities are different, our experiences are different, our environments are different. But like today, you were offered breath. If you're listening to this, okay, so what are you going to do with that? When you ask yourself, like deep down inside, God, what is the most faithful thing I can do right now? I really don't want to go to the gym, but I think I'm supposed to go to the gym. Okay, then go to the gym. I'm really supposed to call my neighbor and check on her. I don't really want to talk to her, though, because she's going to talk my ear off. But wait a minute. You feel like you're supposed to call her? Maybe you should call her. Like, you have no idea what those little things that the Holy Spirit cares enough about you to kind of speak to you that may seem so simple and tiny. And I look back, like, years and years and years that somebody called me. I could have not called you back, And so I'm not saying that to elevate myself, that I did the most faithful thing by calling you. But it's like, there was a point, even when we were talking, that an idea that you had musically involved me and having another girl involved.
Yeah.
And we were sincere about that. We were talking about that, and it just didn't seem to make sense. And so I remember saying to you, just never mind, that's fine. And that catching your ear to say, wait a minute, so you're willing to just walk away from all of this if it doesn't feel right. And I was, and I felt almost conviction about, like, I can't, if this starts to feel forced and contrived and manipulated and created into something that's not even real, that just feels that doesn't feel faithful. And so I feel like God almost honored that by speaking through you to say, well, hold on, I would rather invest in you more than this idea over here. Like, let's talk. And so we kept talking. And so that little decision there was, that even happened because I had been singing with somebody that had, asked me to sing for them because I had done, like, if you go backwards and backwards and backwards, there's all these little, moments.
Threaded together.
Yes. And so what are you being offered today to be faithful with that you may not even see in your lifetime? But also, even if you did, it might be 6 months or 6 years from now that you're like, oh, now I can see God was doing this, seeing if he could trust me with this, because to be a part of what he's doing is really the ultimate goal in my mind. Like, it's not about money, and it's not about fame, and it's not about, innovation. I mean, it has been, and it's been really, really sad and unrewarding in those seasons. But when it became like, what do you want me to do? And then doing that and feeling like he's like, okay, good job. We'll wake up tomorrow. My mercies will be new again, and we'll start fresh, and we'll see what happens. Like, that's exciting to me because there's a lot of peace in it, and because I do struggle with a lot of fear and anxiety. When I know he's in it, there's a calm that I have that is almost like a drug. Like, I want more of that. Like, I want to just know that God is totally okay with what I'm doing. And when I don't feel like that, I'm really, really anxious.
Yeah,
and
I
so,
get that.
Yeah,
I do.
And so I would rather just, this, the basis on it being popular or wealthy or
Just gotta be faithful with what's right in front of you.
So I just think faithfulness, like, ask for faithfulness. And
I love that. And also believing that our Father is faithful. I mean, the flip of that is, that we can just focus on being faithful with the step right in front of us because we know that our Father is faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what a relief, this step back from having to plan everything. I think about parenthood in particular. There's this pressure that we do it right, quote unquote, whatever that is, But
you will do it wrong.
Yeah.
You will if you haven't done it yet.
Exactly. And I think there's this, a lot of times in our lives, we have these moments where what we have in front of us to be faithful with seems insignificant. It doesn't seem like a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we don't, like you were saying, if you weren't faithful with calling me back or calling Benji back or calling, whatever, maybe this wouldn't have happened. But you didn't do those things because you knew your career was going to happen.
Right.
You were faithful with what was right in front of you. And a lot of times we're like, okay, I'll do this because that will mean this. Right. And I think it's important to take that end game off.
Yeah.
And just say, no, I'm going to be faithful because it's what the right thing to do right now.
Right.
Parenting. Sometimes that's asking for forgiveness.
Yes.
Sometimes that's not like doing something. Sometimes that's not doing something.
Exactly.
Or sometimes it's like laundry and dishes.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's just not sexy sometimes to be faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I agree 100% with that, because I think when we get caught up in that end game, like we're missing what's in it. Like, there's something in it that he wants to use, and then he doesn't need us. I mean, you can take that off your back right now. He doesn't need you, first of all. And the sooner I learned that, which was later than I wish I had, excuse me, but he wants me. So the times when I haven't been faithful, I haven't messed up his master plan for the universe. I've just missed out. And so I think when you sent your kids to school today and you yelled at them at the top of your voice, and they got out of the car and they went in school, and they were, you could just tell they were going to have the worst day because of the fight that you had, and you just think you've ruined them. Well, his mercies are new. Like, you have a chance today to faithfully let them get in your car and say, hey, before we say anything else other than how was your day, I'm sorry that they may have done something really wrong, but the way I reacted may have not been the way. Like, you have no idea in that moment. It may impact your child to see you say, I'm really sorry and I was wrong, because you're the grown-up, in a way that 25 years from now they're telling their child, who 25 years later tells their child. And that willingness to be humble could affect the next you don't know who. So it's like, you have no idea how what seems so small,
the domino effect,
may be so huge, to say, you know what, I messed up today and I should not have said that to you. God didn't need you, he wanted you. So you missed out. Well, guess what? He's redemptive. I mean, that's why he didn't just come, and then he didn't just live this life of forgiveness and service. And when we don't do that, throw his hands up in the air and say, "Ugh, I'm going to throw you out with the bathwater." He died, then conquered hell and came back from the grave, which is the impossible thing to do, because he knew we were going to screw up so bad all the time. We would need so much redemption and so much grace that he went and did the ultimate. So nothing that you do to your kids is, I mean, yeah, it can be hurtful, it can be damaging, but God can use all of it. Every bit of it. I mean, you could have been the worst parent in the world as of this moment. You may be listening to this and you've been an abusive parent. You have been a negligent parent. You've been an absent parent. Like, right now, he has redemption for you. You have an opportunity to be able to even go back to those kids and say, I was wrong and I'm going to be different. And God could use that for them to see that transformation in your life, impact them in a way that you never even dreamed.
In a more powerful and transformational way than if you would have done all the right things.
Exactly. And that doesn't say, hey, go be a bad parent and then let, you know, but that's because that's not real. Right. But if what is real is that you've been broken, and what if and if what is real is them to see you restored, God uses that kind of stuff all day long. I mean, it's just incredible. And so, you know,
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really, as parents, we underestimate the power of grace, right? We underestimate how powerful God is to redeem our mess ups.
Yes. Oh.
Yeah. Well, I know we could talk a long time. I can see the stories would just flow. I know you've written a book recently.
Yeah.
And it's just come out. What's the name of your book?
It's called Fight for Her. Comes out early this year. The release date is not set yet, but it's early in this spring, 2018. And it's it was originally inspired by my relationship with my mom and now with my daughter. I have a daughter who's 9. My mom and I have had the super close relationship. I left home. We had a super tumultuous relationship. And then I became a mother to a daughter and realized how selfish I had been. And so a lot of that tumultuous relationship was not entirely my fault, but was tremendously my fault and really stemming from a lot of self-centeredness. And finding myself saying to my daughter, I will fight for you even if I have to fight you. And having this like moment in my life, she was about 3, that although my mom had not said those exact words, that's what she had done. And that I was now doing and saying this to my daughter of like, I'll fight for you even if I have to fight you. So it inspired this book to sort of this movement, if you will, to empower women to stand up for each other, even if we have to stand up to each other. So it's kind of based on my experience as a daughter and now a mother to a daughter, but that all women are daughters. Whether you have a relationship with your mom and dad or not, you are a daughter of the King, and he's fought for you and is fighting for you still. And there's a lot of women that did not have Julie Arbuckle, which is my mom, as a mom saying, I love you enough to tell you that the answer's no, and you can be mad at me. They didn't have her. And so I found myself with Clementine doing and saying certain things where I'm like, no, ma'am, and having conflict with her, and then walking through the mall and her seeing a girl that just seems pretty broken, seems pretty messed up, seems like she's making some pretty negative choices socially, and being able to look at her and say, she did not have me as her mom. She didn't have your grandma as her mom. We don't know what kind of mom she did or didn't have. So that girl needs also stood up for, and that might mean that she needs stood up too, and inspiring us to have relationships with each other that are loving enough and real enough that the girl in the cubicle next to you at work might be selling herself short every single weekend. Maybe you need to go to lunch with her and just get to know her so that your words will have more weight to say, you are actually beautiful. What are you doing? Yeah. You're worth more than you're giving yourself credit. And so it's just fight for her, and it's just the kind of standing up for each other.
For our audience, how do they find that book? Is that available on your website?
Yes, it will be. It will be. Plumbinfo.net is my, or plummusic.net. Sorry about that. Plumb Music. It used to be Plumb Info. It's just PLUMB and then music.net.
Awesome.
And so you should find all things. I mean, you can just Google Plumb, and other than like seeing a pipe for some sort of plumbing, I've done that a few times where my kids have been like, Mom, Google Plumb. And you'll see a pipe of some sort and then my face. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
We've been talking with Christian recording artist, songwriter, author, mother, Tiffany Lee. And she's this sort of Renaissance lady. She's been through a process from late teen years until now she's an adult. She's had great success in Christian music. She's had great success in redemption in your marriage.
Yeah.
And you're a mom. Now, how many kids do you have as we close?
We have 3. I have
kids?
2 boys and a girl.
And how old are they?
12, 11, and 9.
Yeah, so that's for the audience to know that she's living where you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And my 12 is going to be 13 this year, so I'm just pretending that the word teen after his name is just, it's further off than it really is, because
Hold on.
I just want to hold on to it.
Yeah, just get a seatbelt. It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the stories could go on and on. We may have to have you come back for another
I'd love
interview.
to.
But I can tell you for sure, just in the short time that I've known you and talked with you, that I just sense the genuineness of your heart, the authenticity of your faith. And so for our listeners out there, get her music, support this artist. She's now independent. She's making her own living. So get out there and support this record. Get to her website, see what she's all about. We're grateful to have you on our show.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Tiff.
Thanks.
iShine is a faith-based ministry and media company that looks and feels a lot like a Christian version of Disney. iShine is more than entertainment. We're the producer of the largest Christian tween TV series in the world, a nationally syndicated radio show, a Nashville-based record label, host to multiple live tours and summer festivals, an interactive website and social media, and a provider of printed and digital devotionals, preteen Bibles, and church curriculums. But more than anything, we're a trusted Christian resource for parents and pastors. You can turn to us for all things tween. Check us out at ishinelive.com.
So, Robert, you obviously have known Plumb, the artist known as Plumb, for a long time.
Yeah.
And I just got to meet her. So I have these just a tremendous amount of respect for anyone who's willing to put the effort she's put in to being authentic. You know, that's not common with Christian artists or any artist, really. They have a sort of public persona that's kind of the prettier version of their life, and then they have a private that no one ever gets to know person. And my direct sort of take, if you will, on Tiffany is that she's the real deal. That what you see is what you get.
Completely. And she's always been that way. And she writes from a place of personal experience with great empathy and vulnerability. I think that's what's made her such an impactful artist for so many years. I mean, I signed her 20 years ago. She's still on the top 20, you know? Like, that's a long career.
That is a long career, and obviously she has tremendous talent. I mean, there's no question about the talent. She's got a voice. She can write. She obviously can perform, or she wouldn't be doing it for 20 years. But I think the part that, you know, you and I are around a lot of artists. We're around a lot of successful entertainment people. I just love the fact that she was not interested in talking about herself. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Like she was over herself.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so, and I love the way the interview went. It so often when you get into a parenting kind of podcast, you can go towards advice, and expertise, and we kind of landed in embracing brokenness, picking yourself up, continuing to go on, knowing that life is messy, you don't have it all worked out, but being faithful with what's right in front of you. And believing that God is faithful to even take the times that we fail and turn them into something even more profound had we done things correctly, so to speak. And I just love that. I love that story of redemption, and I'm so glad she visited with us. Yeah,
and for our listeners, she was recently on Focus on the Family. You can find her with a Google search on Focus on the Family, and she did an interview about the redemption of her marriage.
Yep.
Which, you know, she goes into great detail about kind of the challenges she's had in staying married, and just some of the struggles with depression and anxiety that she had postpartum. Mm-hmm. So I think there's some just amazing depth to this lady, you know.
Yeah.
Like we just scratched the surface today.
Absolutely.
But the lyrics that I read, and this idea that there is a silence that can come where you're waiting to hear God. And the fact that she brought it out, she said, sometimes we're afraid to hear his answer.
Right.
So we just don't ask,
right.
That kind of thing. I found myself identifying with those thoughts. There is a fear of intimacy, isn't there?
Totally.
With God.
Totally.
Yeah.
With anyone. I think it's natural. We're so kind of wired in this culture to just take care of ourselves and not make ourselves vulnerable. And so intimacy is something that it's a deliberate action. You have to work at it.
Right.
And it's counterintuitive sometimes.
Well, I just felt like we definitely should invite her back.
I agree.
I think her insights as a mom, as a wife, and as an artist are really, really valuable. And again, I can't tell you how encouraging it is for me, because you and I have sat across the desk from so many different record deals that she went the entire show and never once talked
Pitched
about
herself.
Her record, her book.
Other than what we asked.
Yeah, we asked. But she just was content to talk about whatever we needed to.
Yep.
She wasn't here to promote herself. She didn't come to this show as hey, I want to make sure everybody knows about my new stuff.
Nope.
She came as a mom wanting to help parents. And man, gosh, what a blessing that is, just to see it for real. This is the real deal. So I definitely now am a champion for her. I definitely want to go out of my way to promote her stuff. I'm definitely going to go back and buy those records and songs because when you get to know an artist, even just a little bit, like in a show like this, you suddenly become interested. I want to know what she's written and why. I want to go back now and kind of explore some of this musical journey with her, because maybe it's like my journey. Yeah.
I think you'd be surprised. I think it is. And knowing both of you, there's a song on one of her albums that she wrote about her and I, because we had a real falling out for a while. And the story of redemption, the story of forgiveness, the story, she just really tries to dive into real experience rather than just, I'm going to say what people want to hear. So she's remarkable.
Well, I definitely got that sense, and I'm definitely encouraged and a new fan of Plumb, and I hope she just has greater success now than she's ever had, and I hope God uses the platform very well that she's been faithful in, obviously.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Thanks, everyone. We are rapidly working our way through Season 3, and if you've missed any of the previous episodes, we encourage you to go back. I'm going to remind you that we are on every kind of social media, from SoundCloud to iTunes, YouTube channel, everything in between. Just use the keyword Brilliantly Brave Parenting, and you should be able to find us. And if you do like us, please share us with a friend, and we'd be grateful. Thanks. God bless. Next week, we'll be talking with Thaddeus Hefner.
Parents, remember, even if you may not feel brilliant or brave, you are. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, and love, and self-control. And I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me. 2 Timothy 1:7 and 13. This podcast is a service of iShine Ministries and the Tween Gospel Alliance. All rights reserved. Donations to Brilliantly Brave are tax-deductible at iShineLive.com. Review and subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or on our webpage. And read our blog and connect with us at WordPress@BrilliantlyBrave.com. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Brilliantly Brave.
What our kids believe is going to define them for a lifetime. According to George Barna, by the age of 13, what a kid believes is what he'll die believing. For parents and for pastors, that's a frightening experience, especially if you've got an 11 or 12-year-old. At the iShine Ministries headquarters, this became a huge priority in the last year. We partnered with the Tween Gospel Alliance to bring you a brand new resource known as the Shock and Awe Study Guide. And I'm here with one of the co-founders of this entire program, Robert Beeson. Can you tell us, what is the Shock and Awe Study Guide?
It is awesome. More than that? Yeah.
Okay.
The Shock and Awe Study Guide is a super cool thing that either a parent can do with their kid, or a youth pastor can do with their students, or a children's pastor can do with their students. And here's the cool thing about it. It is apologetics for kids. So it's the really huge evidence and thoughts of apologetics wrapped in a way that is really tangible and simple for kids to understand, answering 4 primary questions. And they are, what if there's a God? What if the Bible is true? What if Jesus is who he said he was? And what if I'm part of that plan? And we believe if you can answer those 4 questions and you are drawn through evidence proving those 4 questions, that really it's gonna establish a pretty unshakable foundation of faith.
That sounds very helpful, especially if you're a parent or pastor and you're concerned about the condition of your child's faith, what they believe, what the voices of culture are telling them. If that's you and you're interested, go to ishinelive.com and check out in our web store the Shock and Awe Study Guide. It has a digital cloud video base, so it's 4 studies in a small paperback volume for $9, and it has 4 videos that go with 4 studies. It can be done in a weekend, it can be done over a month, or it can be done bi-monthly, however you need it. It is a fantastic resource that I have used as a pastor in my own home church, and I have been impressed. So, check it out.
Check it out.
Hi, it's Pastor Brad with Brilliantly Brave Parenting, and I am letting you know about a really awesome podcast. If you are a solo parent or you know someone who's solo parenting right now, have I got a podcast for you. A dear friend, co-host of our show, and my partner in crime, Robert Beeson, has started something really spectacular. Robert's here in the studio. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So, Solo Parent Society podcast is talking to solo parents out there that are doing it alone. We talk to other solo parents that are out there, talk about their struggles and insights that they've come across, as well as experts in the fields that solo parents deal with the most. I was a single parent for 8 years, raising 3 girls. My co-host was a solo parent, raising a boy and a girl, also for I think about 7 years. So together we talk about these different topics, and we have great guests, either solo parents, like I said, or experts in the field. So it's new, it's authentic, it's real, it's raw, and it's super fun. Solo Parent Society podcast.
Brilliantly Brave is supporting and encouraging and endorsing what this is, and if you want to check it out, it's available on iTunes?
Yeah, everywhere that Brilliantly Brave is.
Awesome. Thanks.